Rain crashed against the windows of Carter's Grill in downtown Chicago, while the neon open sign flickered through the stormy night. Inside the restaurant, the sound of laughter mixed with the smell of steak butter and fresh coffee. Every table was full, except one small table near the back window, the last table in the restaurant. Emma Carter wiped her tired hands on her apron and checked the clock above the counter. 11:47 p.m., almost closing time. She had worked 16 hours straight. Her feet burned, her eyes felt heavy, and the bills waiting at home were heavier than both. 3 months earlier, her father had died from a sudden heart attack, leaving her the small family restaurant and a mountain of debt. Everyone in Chicago said the place would shut down before winter. Even the bank manager had warned her, "Sell the restaurant before you lose everything." But Emma refused. Because Carter's Grill was more than a business. It was her father's life, and the only thing she had left of him. The front door suddenly opened, and cold wind rushed inside. A man stepped through the doorway, wearing a soaked dark coat, and carrying a little girl in his arms. The child looked asleep against his shoulder. Every customer turned to look at them. The man looked exhausted, not dangerous, just broken. He slowly walked toward the counter. "Do you still serve food this late?" he asked quietly. Emma looked toward the kitchen. The grills were already off. The cooks had gone home. Only she remained. For 1 second she thought about saying no. Then she noticed the little girl's tiny hand clutching the man's coat. The child looked freezing. "Sit anywhere you want," Emma said. The man nodded thankfully and sat at the last table near the window. Emma reheated soup herself, made grilled cheese sandwiches, and poured hot chocolate for the little girl. When she placed the food on the table, the child finally woke up. Her eyes widened at the sight of the hot chocolate. "Daddy, is this really for us?" she whispered. The man smiled weakly. "Yes, sweetheart." Emma walked away, pretending not to hear. At midnight, the restaurant became completely empty, except for them. The storm outside grew worse. Thunder shook the glass windows. Emma cleaned tables quietly, while the little girl ate every bite like it was the best meal of her life. Then she noticed the man staring at the bill in silence. His hands trembled slightly. Finally he stood up and walked toward the counter. "I am sorry," he said softly. "I thought I had enough money, but I do not." Emma looked at the bill. $27. The man reached into his wallet and placed a few wet dollar bills on the counter. "This is all I have right now. I can wash dishes or come back tomorrow." Emma looked at the exhausted father, and then at the little girl who had fallen asleep again in the booth. Something inside her broke. She pushed the money back toward him. "Your daughter needs food more than I need $27. The man stared at her in shock. "I cannot take charity." "It is not charity," Emma replied. "It is just kindness." For a long moment he said nothing. Then his eyes filled with tears he was trying hard to hide. "Thank you," he whispered. Before leaving, the little girl removed a tiny silver bracelet from her wrist and placed it on the counter. "For you," she said sleepily, "because you are nice." Emma smiled. "You keep it, sweetheart." But the girl shook her head. "Mommy used to say good people should never be forgotten." The words hit the father like a knife. His face turned away quickly. Emma realized the girl's mother was gone. The man gently carried his daughter toward the door. Right before leaving, he stopped. "One day, I will repay this. I promise." Emma smiled politely, because she knew people said things like that all the time. The door closed behind them, and they disappeared into the storm. The next morning, Emma arrived at the restaurant early and found an envelope under the front door. Inside was a handwritten note. "Thank you for treating us like human beings when the rest of the world did not. My daughter smiled for the first time since her mother died. You gave her one good memory in the middle of the worst year of our lives. I will never forget that." No name, no phone number, just the note. Emma folded it carefully and placed it inside the register. Weeks passed. Business became worse. Bills piled higher. Suppliers demanded payment. The bank called almost daily. One snowy afternoon, Emma sat alone in the restaurant, staring at the final notice from the bank. If she failed to pay by Friday, Carter's Grill would be closed forever. She looked around the empty restaurant and felt tears burning her eyes. Her father had built the place 40 years ago with his own hands. Now, she was about to lose it. That Friday night, the restaurant was nearly empty again. Emma stood behind the counter, calculating numbers she could no longer fix. Then a black SUV stopped outside the restaurant. Another one parked behind it. Then another. Customers near the window began whispering. Several men in expensive suits stepped out first. Then a tall man wearing a dark coat exited the last vehicle. Emma froze. It was him. The man from the storm. Yai night. But he looked completely different now. Confident, powerful, surrounded by security guards. The entire restaurant turned silent as he walked inside. Emma's heart pounded. A little girl ran in behind him, smiling brightly. "Daddy, this is the place." The man walked to the counter. "Hello, Emma. You remember me?" she asked softly. "I remember every person who showed kindness when I had nothing left." The little girl hugged Emma tightly. The man looked around the restaurant slowly. 3 months ago, he said, "my wife died from cancer. After paying medical bills, I lost almost everything. That night was the lowest moment of my life." Emma listened quietly. "I was driving across the city, trying to find somewhere warm for my daughter to eat. 5 restaurants turned us away because we looked homeless." His eyes locked onto hers. "But you did not." The restaurant stayed silent enough to hear the rain outside again. Then one customer suddenly whispered the man's name. People gasped. Emma finally recognized him. Daniel Brooks, the billionaire founder of one of the biggest technology companies in America. She stared in disbelief. Daniel smiled slightly. "Funny how quickly people respect you when they know your bank account." Emma felt speechless. Daniel reached into his coat and placed a folder on the counter. "What is this?" she asked. "Open it." Her hands shook as she opened the folder. Inside were legal documents. She looked confused. "I bought the building next door," Daniel said, "and the empty property behind this restaurant. Tomorrow construction begins." Emma blinked in confusion. "Construction for what?" Daniel smiled warmly. "For the new Carter's Grill. A larger kitchen, a rooftop dining area, modern renovations, and complete financial freedom." Emma's eyes widened. "I do not understand. You fed my daughter when nobody else cared. Now I want this place to survive another 40 years. The entire restaurant watched in complete silence. Emma tried to speak, but no words came out. Daniel continued. "There is one more thing." He handed her another paper. "A paid receipt from the bank. Your debt is gone." Emma covered her mouth as tears streamed down her face. "Why would you do this?" she whispered. Daniel looked toward his daughter. "Because that night you gave us dignity when life had taken everything else away." The little girl smiled up at Emma. "Daddy says heroes are real now." Several customers quietly wiped tears from their eyes. Emma looked around the restaurant her father once built with nothing but hope and hard work. For the first time since his death, she felt him there again, alive in the kindness that still existed inside strangers. Daniel extended his hand. "So Emma, what do you say we save this place together?" She laughed through tears and shook his hand. Outside, the storm finally began to clear, and above the glowing lights of Chicago, the first stars of the night appeared again. Sometimes one small act of kindness does not just change a single night. Sometimes it saves an entire life. And sometimes creates a story people never forget.